Week 7 in the NFL, and the Philadelphia Eagles are on some familiar territory where they won their first Super Bowl championship at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, facing another familiar face in Carson Wentz. Welcome into the Verizon pregame show. Mark Farzetta along with Seth Joyner here on the Seth Joyner Show YouTube channel, as well as Derek Gunn. Like I said, familiar faces, but some good news. Start out with some breaking news. Just moments ago, gentlemen, we did learn that Jalen Carter is active today going against the Minnesota Vikings, and we knew earlier in the week that Quinyon Mitchell was going to be playing in this game. Thank goodness, when you go up against the receiving core featuring Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings, and also Landon Dickerson active as well at left guard for the Philadelphia Eagles. All good news, all things the Eagles, quite frankly, need at this point. We know about the mini bye. We know about the 10-day break now. Seth, is that enough time to try to correct the many mistakes that the Eagles made 10 days ago against the New York Giants?
It depends. There's been a lot of chatter about, what this team has been doing the last couple of days. Lane Johnson had some things to say. Jordan Mailata has some things to say. Jalen Hurts, was on the defensive. A.J. Brown kind of sort of was on the defensive. So you got a lot going on right now as far as, his football team is concerned. And I get it that they're concerned. But at the end of the day, when the rubber meets the road, we'll find out whether they could remedy or whether they can remedy their issues today against this Minnesota Vikings team. You got a defense and a defensive coordinator in Brian Flores that loves to pressure. But they're playing against a Minnesota defense that's ranked 23rd in the National Football League against the run, and they give up 134 yards per game. Feels like the get-right game for the offensive line and Saquon Barkley that we've been searching for all season long. The problem is, if they've got any kind of remedy for you on first down and they get you in second and third and long D-gun, you know that Brian Flores is going to bring everything plus the kitchen sink.
See, you just jinxed it when you said get right game. See, because we said that going into the Giants game. The Giants were also a very porous defense against the run. How'd that work out for the Eagles running game that night? And I'm talking about a Giants team that's not nearly as talented as Minnesota. And I'm not saying Minnesota is a great team, but the Giants are a team in a state of flux. They have been for the last 5-6 years. But yet they played the Eagles like they were a front runner and a Super Bowl contender in a lot of ways. Now, to answer your initial question, Mark, I think 10 days is more than enough to rectify the problems based on what your head coach and what the players are saying, that the things that we need to correct are small. Focus, technique, better angles, better tackling. That's elementary stuff. So 10 days is more than enough time to sit there and look at all the film you need to look at. All hands on deck. You're getting bodies back now for this particular game. It's all hands on deck. You have a city that is basically questioning who you are, and what you're going to be for the remainder of this season at this particular time. If you look at all the social media platforms, if you watch TV, if you listen to radio, podcasts, everybody's in a state of shock about where this team is, which is funny because they're sitting at 4-2, but this is a team that's reeling at 4-2. They're not progressing, they're regressing. I still can't get it out of my mind that in the span of 5 days, they allowed a quarterback who has less than 2 years of experience in Bo Nix chew them up. And then 5 days later, let a guy starting his third game as a professional look like a seasoned vet against his defense, avoiding tackles, making incredible throws, coupled with a rookie running back who was running roughshod all over him and rubbing it in their faces. That's all you need to know. If you have any pride whatsoever, you take those things into consideration over the last 10 days. You've had time to rest, to rehab, to mentally refocus. You've heard all the comments from media experts, from the fans alike about your team and about they are basically losing faith in you. What more do you need as a defending Super Bowl champion to come out and slap the Minnesota Vikings silly on this afternoon? And yet, as I make that statement, I sit here and I'm not so sure what we're going to see today.
Well, it's a day of surprises, gentlemen. Some more breaking news. Adam Schefter putting it out there, according to sources, that Brandon Graham is considering unretiring and joining up with the Philadelphia Eagles again. This just came out about 4 or 5 minutes ago, right before we went live on the show. So again, we look at Jalen Carter playing in this game, Landon Dickerson playing in this game, and now this news comes out. Brandon Graham considering returning to the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to talk about the edge rusher position today, also talking about Jahad Campbell potentially moving out there more in a more normal basis with Nakobe Dean coming back. But what do you guys make of this report saying that Brandon Graham is considering unretiring?
To be honest with you, I love it. I love it because, after the Super Bowl last year, I did a sports talk where I hosted and had Brandon. And I talked to him. I said, listen, man, I watched you play all season long. And up until the point in time where, he tore his pec, he was playing probably the best he's ever played. And I'm like, I know that there's more in there, BG, So tell me, you coming back or you retiring? And he just kind of danced around it. He wouldn't give me an answer. And then, about a week later, he announced that he was retiring. I think I'm of the opinion that the fact that he retired is twofold. First of all, he didn't want to play for another organization. So even if he thought that there was some more football in him, he wasn't going to leave the Eagles and go play somewhere else. He was either going to play with the Eagles or he was going to retire. The second thing I believe happened, I believe that Howie and his youth movement on the defensive side of the football probably contributed to that decision. And that decision was based upon, okay, well, we might not be as good as we were this year on defense because we're in a youth movement. But I think that Howie realized after week one that they needed some additional leadership. In comes Zadarius Smith. Then, after 4 games, Zadarius Smith decides that he's going to retire. That kind of was a red flag to me because I'm just trying to figure out, what the heck is going on. And his explanation was, oh, I lost the love for the game. Well, wait a minute. Help me understand this, Z. You work out the entire offseason. You work out all through training camp, all through preseason with the hopes of being signed to play another year. And you get on the field and you play pretty solidly, for a couple of games. And all of a sudden you get to week 6 and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, you've mysteriously lost the love for the game. I call BS. There's something else that transpired, whether it's the reports that he was being packaged up to be traded, or he was not happy with the amount of playing time that he was being, dished out. That may be the reason why he decided to walk away. Now, this thing with Brandon. A guy who has, I believe, more left in the tank than Zadarius Smith has left in the tank. That's the first thing. But the other thing is you get a trusted voice, a trusted leader, something that this defense needs in spades, to back in the building if it winds up being that he does make the decision to come back, And I feel like, D-Gun, that listen, I won't ever say it's a mistake because people do what they got to do when they got to do it for whatever reasons. But I felt like Brandon had at least one good year left in him. Mm-hmm. And with this team, in my opinion, still being in the Super Bowl window with the offensive, firepower that we have, once they figure it out, and the defense, the young guys who don't know any better, mm-hmm. That will just come out and play hard, that they're in a position for another run.
Mm. Brandon Graham coming back, if that is a reality, it's not about the money. It's about the love of the game and the absence in his life of the game. When he decided to retire, it was an internal struggle because he wanted a chance to get away and to spend more time with his young kids. And he wanted to try some things in the media, as he did. He's on the NFL Network. He's doing a local podcast with another outfit as well. And every time I talk to him back and forth, he seems satisfied with that. But sometimes, Seth, as you know, the competitive juices, man, are hard to let go. That competitive juice demon is hard to let go of. And a lot of players say, I know it was time to retire. And a lot of times they're lying to you. They retire because their bodies have told them they can't physically do it anymore. Mentally, they just can't do it anymore. But with Brandon Graham, he walked away from the game. He retore that pectoral. I broke the story. He retore that muscle. And he said, basically, I'm tired of rehabbing and trying to get my body right. But if the Eagles approached him about coming back, it tells me 2 things. Number one, that all the other options out there, how he looked at, were not viable options, or there just wasn't much on the open market. And number 2, that's just how desperate they are. When you look at the volume of sacks the Eagles have this season, they're still in 6 games into the season, single digits in sacks. And the edge rusher only has 1. And oh, by the way, he walked away from the game. So they're not getting any consistent pressure from the edge as they were a season ago. If Brandon comes in now, how long will it take him to get in shape, not just physically, but mentally as well? At least a couple of weeks? Because you don't want to go out there and pull something or tear something because you're not, where you're supposed to be. That's what OTAs are for, training camps, the minuscule training camps that they do, to toughen up the body a little bit, to get some callus on the body and on the mind as well. So it's going to take Brandon just a little bit to get to that point. How much will he play? They're not going to play him every down at this stage of his life. How much will he play? But you're right, Seth. Him having that influence in the locker room on other players is a calming factor. Brandon is a nonstop talker, and players gravitate towards stuff like that. But there's no Fletcher Cox to reel him in now. Brandon's on his own. He's a lone wolf now in terms of who he's going to be on the football field. But he does lend a valuable experience. He's always been looked at as a big brother and a mentor to a lot of young players in that locker room. And maybe he could be that stabilizing force in the trenches that they've so desperately missed up to this point of the season.
I don't see his chatter, the same way that I see a C.J. Gardner-Johnson chatter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's a positive thing.
Oh, it is.
The way that he goes about it.
Yeah.
And he would have been the calming influence to be standing next to Jalen Carter in week one, to prevent that from happening. And I still think that there's some residual as far as that situation was concerned. And I was concerned about it, this plaguing Jalen, even at this time, about how he's perceived because of what transpired. But listen, to your point, D-Gun, they don't have to play him all the time.
No.
They need him for critical moments. They need him to give a guy on one side or the other a break. Obviously, when you get Nolan Smith back, probably right after the bye, that's going to be, a big benefit, to the outside. But you pick your spots, and as you get towards the end of the season, he should be kind of rounding into, better shape where you can begin to, uptick his workload if Jalen Hunt doesn't rise to the occasion. If some of those if Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari don't step up and start getting the job done, you got this guy that can step in and what he can give you. But I love the idea. I hope it happens.
Yeah, I hope he can get to Minnesota like today, as a matter of fact. He's got a little bit of time to get out there.
Yeah, that probably won't happen.
No,
he did have his finest moment as a player in that stadium.
Yes, he did.
So.
Of course. By the way, 46% of the snaps Brandon Graham played in last year on the Eagles defense. 37 years young now, making his return, likely, considering unretiring, to rejoin the Philadelphia Eagles. Speaking of the edge rusher position, Nakobe Dean was healthy last week. He was playing out there on special teams only against the New York Giants. Do you guys see that shakeup happening that many people have speculated with him going back to play next to Zach Bond, which, by the way, Nakobe Dean said in his locker this week, there'd be no learning curve there. He's been here. He's been practicing. He obviously played all last year next to Zach Bond. He'd be right back in the swing of things if he was able to rejoin the Eagles linebacking core and then move Jahad Campbell to the edge rusher position. Is that a shakeup set that you would champion?
First of all, let me say there is a learning curve, okay? Because when your body hasn't played at the highest level since, what week was it last year that he got hurt?
Late in the season. I want to say like week 15 maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. So I don't care how much practicing you've done and how much practicing he's done and how much practicing he'll do. There's nothing like game time, intensity. So there's a little bit of, kind of getting back into the flow of things, if you will. I said it last week. I think I said it in my podcast the last 2 weeks. Vic Fangio's got, a tough decision to make. Jahad Campbell's done nothing but played well, made a couple of plays that have been, essential to the Eagles winning early in the season. And now you have Nakobe Dean, who has been the green dot, who has been the leader at the linebacker spot before he got injured. What do you do? Okay? Because the Eagles, are terrible against the run right now. They are ranked They are ranked 26 against the run. They're giving up 134 yards per game, and each and every game they've given up over 100 yards, through the first 6 games of the season. They can't seem to get the run under control unless they get into, a 5-man front, which puts you at a deficit as far as the passing game is concerned. So, what does Vic Fangio do? I mean, if you have to, then you play Nakobe Dean a little bit. I'm not saying that Nakobe deserves to lose his job because of injury, but I'm not saying that Jahad Campbell deserves a decrease in playing time just because Nakobe Dean is back. Vic Fangio's got to kind of figure that out and work that out because it's going to be between the two. Zach Bond ain't coming off the field after that contract he just signed last year. But the one thing that you do have at your advantage is that in sub packages you can take Jahad Campbell and play him on the outside sometimes instead of taking him off the field. Because in my opinion, you have to worry about, Derek, how that affects Jahad Campbell when you start taking him off the field, the flow and whatnot, how it's broken when you put Nakobe in and then Nakobe's out and then Jahad's in and Jahad's in and then Nakobe. How does that exactly. You break the continuity, but also the psychological effect of it. Because as a player, we like certainty. I'm the starter, no doubt about it. I'm getting the majority of the snaps. I know the number 2 is coming in. Back in my day, wasn't nobody getting none of my reps. I mean, I had to have a leg hanging off. I'm not giving up any of my reps. But in today's game, I get it. You're trying to figure out how many reps you're going to get, how many plays you're going to play, how you split it up. And players today are okay with that. But it's a little unsettling to me because when I'm playing, I tend to get a feel for the game and a feel for how opponents are trying to attack me. And the longer I'm on the field, the better feel I get for that. So I can't imagine what it's like being in, being out, being in, being out, and then those critical moments. Like, it always drives me crazy, D-Gun, when it's like 4th and 1, 3rd and 2 at a critical point in the game, and I look and I see, one of the starters standing over on the sideline, sipping Gatorade. I'm like, get your ass in the game, man. Like, you one of the best players on the team, and you one of the highest paid defensive players for a reason. You mean to tell me you can't suck it up and play one more play? Like, I got one more anything in me.
I like the fact of putting Nakobe Dean back. I think he's a disruptor, especially against the running game, something they sorely missed. I love his lateral speed. In terms of help control the running game. You look at how many big running plays the opposition has had against this Eagles team, not just up the middle, which is atrocious in itself, but off the tackles. They've had too many running backs turning the corner, getting big gains on them, and Nakobe Dean can break that up. I would like to see Jahad Campbell go to the edge and see if he can play consistent downs on the pass. I believe he could. I mean, you got to try something different. You have to flip the script. What you've done up to this point is not working, and I can't emphasize enough. Zadarius Smith was your only edge rusher with a sack out of 9 sacks. 6 games in, you only have 9 sacks as a team, not as a team, and the guy from the edge who had 1 is no longer with your organization. Let's flip the script back. If Nakobe Dean is healthy enough, get him in there with Zach Bond. I think that 1-2 combination could still be one of the best in the National Football League, and let's see what Jahad Campbell can do from the outside. It sure can't be any worse than what it already is.
Certainly agree with that. Now, I like to say if you have an offensive line problem, you have an everything problem, gentlemen. When we come back, we'll talk about why the offensive line, outside of injury and health, obviously, they might have been struggling to this point this season, and hopefully turn things around today. We'll talk about all that and more when we return on the Verizon pregame show.
I got this old thing and the bill from the store where I got it. Figured you could beat it with a better deal on one of these big boys.
That doesn't work that way.
Well, at Verizon, anyone can bring in their AT&T or T-Mobile bill, and they'll give you a better deal.
I thought Verizon was pricey.
No, better deal, best 5G network. Back to the TV. Does it come higher than 8K? Because I don't like to squint.
Ma'am, take your TV and go.
Bring your AT&T or T-Mobile bill to Verizon for a better deal.
Guess you're not as cool as Verizon.
You don't know that?
There's a number on the screen.
There's a number on the screen. There's a number on the screen.
There's a number on the screen.
There's a number on the screen.
There's a number on the screen.
There is a number on the screen.
There's a number on the screen.
There's a number on the screen.
Since 1893, Weber Display and Packaging has been Pennsylvania's leading manufacturer of corrugated packaging and displays. We're family-owned with 4 Philadelphia locations, 2 converting facilities, a warehouse, and a fulfillment center. Designed through delivery, we exceed customer needs. Weber Display and Packaging. Our core values drive everything we do. Come join our team.
This upcoming segment is brought to you by Verizon. Before we get into our Say What segment, one thing we have to acknowledge throughout this entire season is something that's very awkward for a lot of Philadelphia Eagles fans to admit, and that is that the offensive line has played well below the standard that they have set for the last decade plus under Jeff Stoutland. Seth, when you look at this offensive line play, you only see one offensive lineman right now ranked by ESPN in the top 20 in win rate at their position from a year ago, and that's Jordan Mailata, who also Pro Football Focus last year called the best player in football, the highest rated player in football. What are you seeing from this offensive line that has led to their struggles?
I'm seeing that whatever rating they put out, is off. Because as much as Jordan Mailata has been talking the last couple of weeks, if you go and you watch the film, he is one of the major culprits of, why the offensive line has not performed at the level it needs to perform at. I will go back and say that I think the greatest loss this past offseason was Mekhi Becton. Because when you look at this offensive line, they're not mauling anybody right now. I thought that Mekhi Becton was that force, was that piece, that was so big and so dominant that, he was just throwing people around, like Baby Huey at the playground, They don't have that anymore. It could be Jordan Mailata, but that's hard to do from the outside. And if you look at Jordan, his feet aren't the best that they could be. He gets beat with the speed rush sometimes because he sits and he waits. If you watch Lane will mix it up on you. He'll kick sometimes he'll quick set you, to kind of catch you off guard. But across the board, they've all taken turns making mistakes, whether it's in the pass game or the run game. Oh, Jalen had a guy running wide open. He just didn't have time because somebody got beat up front. The Denver game, J.D. Jones just destroyed Cam Jurgens all game long. Every single time the Eagles wanted to run the ball out of shotgun, they slanted, across Jalen's face every single time. And they took Cam and just stuck him in the backfield. So it cut the field in half where Saquon couldn't get all the way across. A couple of times he ran right into the mess that JD created, So I don't know what it is. It's a mindset to me. Maybe they're missing Mekhi, maybe not. I don't know what it is. Maybe the injuries aren't allowing these guys to play at the level that they need to play at. Even at times, as much as I love Lane Johnson, there's times where I see him get pushed back in the backfield on pass plays, D-Gun. But what I do know is they need an attitude adjustment, and Jordan said it well. Everybody's got to go out and do their effing job. I agree, but it's got to be a total deal. And they played like that as an offensive line last year, not so much this year. They're taking turns, blowing assignments, getting beat, across the board. And it just shows. And until they come together as a complete unit and start playing together and make their mind up that they're going to start driving people off the ball, taking real estate instead of giving the opponents the ability to take real estate in the other direction. Because right now, defenses are playing over on our side of the football. Last year, we played 2, 3, 4 yards on the other side of the ball.
It's funny. You go from one year to the next. You look at last season. They had injuries last year along the offensive line, but when they inserted other people, the machine kept running. It was an unstoppable machine. This year, you've had a multitude of injuries, but yet this offensive line, to pick up on the word we talked about a moment ago, continuity. The continuity doesn't exist with this particular group of offensive linemen. There's been minor changes. Yes, Mekhi Becton was a big loss for helping stabilize the right side of that offensive line, but they've had enough talent at Stoutland University that the offensive line should not look nearly this bad. You talk about how Lane Johnson is getting pushed back. I do think that shoulder injury is a lot worse, or that stinger's a lot worse than he's let on. And, of course, as we know, not just the Eagles, but all professional football teams are pretty good at hiding certain injuries when you put football players back out on that field. Landon Dickerson, I mean, he's like, now it's every game he's hurt. You know, he might be up to date. We don't know if he's going to last the whole game. Then you've got to get somebody else up to speed and get him back in there as well. Jordan Mailata hasn't played close to what he played like a year ago for whatever reason it may be. You know, they talk about mental focus. I think it's physical ability, you know, more so than mental focus. You know what the snap counts are. You always have the advantage as an offense of knowing what the snap counts are. There's no excuse for a lack of mental focus. You know what your assignment is. You're not new to this offense. You didn't come in off the streets learning the offenses, learning all the audibles. You know this offense as well as the quarterback and anybody else. I just think basically right now, physical ability is lacking with this offensive group. I don't think they have that dog in them offensively like they did a year ago. They stepped out on the football field a year ago. They dared you to stop them, and nobody could. For whatever reason, this year, and even when they were winning, there was grumblings already. There seems to be too much individualism with this offense this year, more so than a cohesive unit playing football. And now you got more and more people talking about this. Now, one person says it's a lack of focus. One person says it's predictability. One guy's grumbling because he's not getting the football enough. One guy's saying, well, I don't know about meetings. I don't know what you're talking about. I think that continuity is missing on this offensive unit. You look at them up and down the board. What did they have, 8 Pro Bowlers last year? They're all back. So why are they not playing up to this? Are they fat cats? Are they sitting on their past laurels? We already know how difficult it is to get back to a Super Bowl once you've won it. But don't make it that much more harder on yourself, which is what this team has done.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because you also hear Jordan Mailata this week at his locker say, we actually did go back and look at our stuff from last year just to kind of remind us. It was in the vein of to remind us that we are better than how we're playing right now. But as far as the focus part goes, here as part of our Say What segment this week, Jordan Mailata at his locker talking about that lack of focus.
You know, you just got to want it. And I think our focus hasn't been there, quite frankly, and to be really blunt. So it's something that we got to make a choice to every play and every down. So you turn the film on, that's just like, okay, we weren't focused here. I'm not going to sit there and ask why they weren't focused. I'm just like, hey, do your job.
Hold up, man.
Appreciate the self-edit.
Appreciate
the self-edit.
You're a professional athlete. You're one of 1,700 chosen few that God's given you the ability to play this game at the highest level. You're either making a high 6 or high 7 figure. How in the world do you lack focus? Focus. That's the one word that should never come out of your mouth. We lack focus. It's not like you're rebuilding this team from the ground up. You're self-contained. You're intact from a season ago that got you to the win, to the Super Bowl trophy, to hoist that event. Focus. What are you thinking about? What else is there to think about when you go to work? How are you not focused to play this game? This is not a good job where you can say, I'm going to put 30 years into this business and then retire and get my pension. No. Your average lifespan is 3.5 years. You know, you were a rugby player, and they took a chance on you. And I'm not singling out him, but he's the one that said focus.
Yes.
They took a chance on you, gave you a couple of years to teach you the game of football, and made you, a couple of years ago, arguably the best left tackle in the game. And now you guys across the board, you know, Pro Bowl players who know this offense inside. I don't care Kellen Moore's not here anymore. The offense has not changed, but the mindset has according to these guys. And when one player says we're predictable, that starts with the coaching staff. When another guy says we lack focus, that's the players across the board. You're cheating yourself and the fan base out of truly what we expect you to be week in and week out.
You know, I just don't think the players today love the game the way that we loved it back in my day. I was consumed with the game, you know. So there was never a point of a lack of focus because I put too much into the game to get to Sunday and not reap the rewards and the benefits of it all. I mean, I'm just appalled that, you know, a professional athlete would talk about being not focused. And then I go on social media on Friday night and, you know, Mr. Jordan Mailata is singing karaoke somewhere. You want to talk about focus? If his ass don't show up today, you can best believe that'll be a big talking point, you know, next week. Not only in the locker room, but in the media. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you mentioned, D-Gun, the coaches. When you hear players talk about a lack of focus, a lack of preparedness, a lack of, predictability, to me, a lot of that, if it all begins and ends with Nick Sirianni, then, maybe Nick is missing something. And then that leads me to, you, Mark, talking about, they look back on last year. If you guys remember at the beginning of the year, Nick Sirianni just wanted to, ignore the fact that they were defending Super Bowl champions. Oh, what defending? We're not defending anything, What are you talking about? I thought that was a major mistake because when you're the best of the best, when you're the king of the mountain, you get the opportunity to go out and say to everybody else, you get to beat your chest and stand in front of everybody else and say, come get it, big boy, because I'm the top dog, okay? And the amount of confidence that brews in you when you know that you've gone to the mountaintop and everybody else is trying to come at you and everybody else is trying to get you, you use it. You use that. Lean into that. And I thought that Nick Sirianni did these players a disservice for trying to say he didn't want them to talk about it. He didn't want to remember it. He didn't want to even acknowledge it. And now all of a sudden in week 6, when the proverbial has hit the fan, now they want to lean into the strength of that. He should have done that from the beginning, D-Gun.
You're correct. And not only that, but Nick Sirianni said something earlier this week that he said a couple of times about the fact that I let my field generals, I don't overshadow people. I let my field generals run what they're supposed to run, what I brought them in for. If that is truly the case, shame on you as a head football coach, because there's nothing wrong with a head football coach stepping in and telling his lieutenants, I want this change, I want that change. That's what you're hired for. You're the top gun. You're the next man below the general manager and the owner. There's nobody else that has more control in a football environment outside of the owner and the GM than a head football coach in the National Football League. And if your product is off kilter, it's your job to get it back on. Oh, I just got to let it go. No, you don't. No, you don't, because you're the defending Super Bowl champ. You let him learn on the fly when you appointed him that job. So he had between January and April to sit down and look at all the film and get the little nuances right. Then you had the OTAs to walk through how you want this thing run. Then you hit the ground running in training camp and you tell these guys, this is what we demand of you as a defending champ. But to sit here doing this, I let my guys do that. No, that's on you. No, you don't let them do it. It's like being a father. You let your kids learn along the way, but you correct them as well. See, and that's what he's not doing. If Nick Sirianni truly believes that he has to let his field generals do their thing, and even if Vic Fangio's accomplished, but if I'm the head coach, I don't care if I'm 20 years younger than my defensive coordinator. If I see something that I don't like, it's my job to step in and say, we need to fix this because this is not working. You can't just let them keep going because right now it's not working. Two consecutive games, it's not working. The entire season, the biggest facet of your offense that propelled you to a Super Bowl a season ago is not working, the running game. Something's got to change. You got to have one of those come to Jesus meetings with everybody in the organization. That's what you need to do.
They should have had that come to Jesus meeting a long time ago, though, D-Gun.
But that's not Nick Sirianni's
and
character.
not in a
That's
parking
the problem.
lot, by the way.
Not in the parking lot.
Yeah, but my thing is, so this week, on my podcast, what I did was I kind of created. A lot of times I do it on the fly because I kind of know in my head what I wanted to talk about. But there are some things I wanted to get to. And Jalen Hurts, he's in his 6th year. He's been 5 years with Nick Sirianni, right? So then I wrote questions and I put these down here. I said, at this point in time, Jalen Hurts should own this offense, okay? And he should know where everyone is on every play. Why do I say that? Because at the end of the day, this is Nick Sirianni's offense. I don't care what anybody says. If you go back to Nick's first year, he started off as the offensive coordinator. Things were going sideways, and he had to do what? He moved Shane Steichen over, and it was too much for him. He gave Shane Steichen control over the offense. Yeah. That was Nick Sirianni's offense. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Year 2, Steichen is the offensive coordinator again. They go to the Super Bowl. They lose in the Super Bowl to Kansas City. They come back the next year, Brian Johnson takes over. And I think we all know that wasn't Brian Johnson's offense. He was running Sirianni's offense. He took the fall for it, but it was Sirianni's offense. And then you can look at Kellen Moore coming in here last year and the team struggling through the first 4 games. And then all of a sudden they hit their stride running the game. And yes, Kellen Moore was calling the plays, but you can kind of see the interactions on the sideline between Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni at certain points in time and certain things that are said, yeah, I don't care, just go ahead and run it, That was Nick Sirianni's offense. And one of the reasons that Kellen Moore hightailed his ass out of here is because he wasn't running things the way he wanted. He was running it according to how Nick Sirianni wanted it run. Fast forward. Now we got a new offensive coordinator in Kevin Petula who's been here with Nick Sirianni ever since Nick Sirianni's gotten here. Whose offense do you think he's running? Mm-hmm. Okay? So now, a lot of this falls on Nick Sirianni and his ability to make the necessary adjustments with his coaching staff. So I'm not going to point and put all the onus on Kevin Petula, a guy who's never called plays before, but I am going to assign some of the blame to Jalen Hurts because by this point in time, Jalen Hurts should understand this offense. He should be able to operate this offense in his sleep, because what great quarterbacks do is that they digest the entire offense bit by bit. See, I learned defenses, D-Gun, because I'm a visual learner. So I would draw them up. So I would take an offensive formation, and I went through a lot of paper my rookie year. I would take the offensive play, and I would draw it up. As a matter of fact, they used to have the boxes where you had, like on a sheet of paper, you had an offensive formation on each side. There was 8 on each. And I would draw up the offensive plays, and then I would put the defense against it. And in the process of putting where everybody was supposed to be, unbeknownst to me, I was learning what everybody on the field was supposed to do. Like I could tell you what the corner's technique was and what they were supposed to do, what the safety was supposed to do. By alignment, we're in an over formation, okay? I can see where my gap responsibility is when they run my way, but when they run away and they run to me, where does Byron fit? Where's the other linebacker? Where's that extra gap where? So Jalen Hurts should be studying the offense in like manner. Put it up against every defense that you could potentially face, okay? And then draw the routes so you see where they are and where they're supposed to hit at certain times. So, and when you're in a game, he should know 1001, 1002. A.J. Brown, if Devontae ain't open, where's my outlet? Is it Saquon or is it Dallas Goedert check releasing late? He should know it, man. So when he stands in the pocket, patting the ball, looking all over the place, I don't buy that, man. That's panic. Because he should know, by being in this offense for 5 years, he should know where every damn player is on every play. Offensive linemen, wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs, and most importantly, himself.
Every time he steps back and he's patting the ball, I'm saying, throw the ball, man. Throw the ball. 1, 2, 3, throw the ball, man. Throw the ball. I don't think he trusts what he sees downfield, to be honest with you. And if that is the case, the offensive coordinator plus the head coach should have identified that a long time ago and rectify that problem. Or what you do is you have your receivers adjust routes until we get him accustomed to getting rid of the ball in a timing situation. And when the teams defensively have done a much better job keeping him in that corral and not letting him float outside that he likes to do. Now, it perplexes me because earlier in the season, teams did that, and he would pick apart blitzing defenses. All of a sudden, the last few games, he can't find a target? What the heck's going on? What is with this? I mean, this whole offense, and I'm not saying the defense is still growing, and I get it. You lost the components you lost on defense have hurt you defensively a lot more than anybody anticipated. But offensively, it is a self-contained offense, but it's discombobulated. And just listening to what the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and the players are saying, everybody's not on the same page, or either everybody's lying about what they're telling the general media and the general fan bases.
There was the parking lot meeting. And then this week there was like the official meeting where everyone got in the film room and was watching all the mistakes that they were making. And that was supposed to, hopefully, we'll see today, cure some of the Eagles' problems. But when we come back, we'll talk about who the Eagles are going to be facing today in the Minnesota Vikings as we go behind enemy lines. That's when we return on the Verizon pregame show.
Mid-Penn Bank's Sports and Entertainment Division was created because we understand the unique financial situations of both athletes and entertainers. So whether you're trying to win a Grammy or an MVP, reach out to one of our professionals to help us navigate your financial journey.
At Revolution X, we know that fortunes are made in times of uncertainty. Are you selling your investment real estate? Are you interested in deferring your tax with a 1031 exchange? At RevX, we're experts in 1031 exchange planning and the use of passive real estate options using DSTs. Not in the midst of an exchange and want to invest in real estate but don't know where to start? Revolution X has institutional grade real estate options for any size investor right now. Set up a consultation at RevXWealth.com. RevX, defer the tax, maximize the gain.
Gentlemen, are you ready for a wardrobe update? Introducing Divine Nine's Custom Menswear, your clothier for truly unique, custom-made threads. With Divine Nine, you can design your own one-of-a-kind suit, jacket, slacks, shirts, golf pants, and shorts, perfectly handcrafted by our skilled artisans who will bring your vision to life. Prepare to stand out from the crowd with Divine Nine's Custom Clothier, official clothier of Seth Joyner. Custom clothing made for you.
Pride, passion, and persistence. These are the values that drive us all at Ron Jaworski Golf. We strive to deliver outstanding conditions as well as playability for golfers of all ages and abilities. Our championship golf courses offer a variety of challenges from a link-style walk along the river to an escape into the pines and everything in between. My team at Ron Jaworski Golf is committed to delivering memorable experiences every single day. See all we do at ronjaworskigolf.com.
This upcoming segment is brought to you by Recovery Unplugged. Let's go behind enemy lines as we look at the Philadelphia Eagles' opponent in the Minnesota Vikings. First and foremost, not only are they coming off their bye week, but before that, they had a game in Dublin, Ireland, and then they were in England playing football as well. Before they took their bye, now they're back home at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, Minnesota. First player I'm going to be looking at today for behind enemy lines is Isaiah Rodgers. Yes, that's right, the former Eagle. You heard from Nick Sirianni earlier in the week that, yes, he did want Isaiah Rodgers back. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. For a while, Rodgers said that the only team he was really talking about signing another contract with was the Philadelphia Eagles, but they weren't able to close that deal. He has an interception. He did return that interception back for a touchdown, but here's the number one reason why. It's not just about his covering. It's not just about his intercepting ability or anything like that. It's about how predictable the Eagles' offense has been this season, according to Lane Johnson and others in the Eagles' locker room. Predictability going against a guy that was here last year, that saw this defense, that saw Jalen Hurts for more than most defensive backs in the NFL. I don't think that makes another offense less predictable, unfortunately. And Seth, I'm sure you know this. Once you go to another team, you got to give up the goods on that former team, especially if you're facing them in the next season. That's what's going on today. Gunnar, who are you looking at today behind enemy lines?
I'm intrigued by Vikings defensive coordinator Brian Flores. I think he's one of the best DCs in all of football, and he gets that acknowledgement from across the league. You know, last year his defense was 5th in the National Football League. This year is number 6 across the board. They're giving up less than 290 yards a game. They're 2nd in the league in pass defense at 157.6, and they're 5th in giving up points at only 19.4. Now, Seth alluded earlier to the fact that they're 24th in the league against the run. They're giving up a little over 132 yards a game. But don't let that number fool you. The Giants' run defense was even worse, and the Giants stonewalled everything Saquon Barkley and the Eagles' offense tried to do in terms of a running game. Brian Flores' defense is number 2 in the league in blitzing. They will blitz a minimum 30% of the time, and they're number 3 in the league in quarterback pressure. That's all I need to know. Brian Flores is coming after Jalen Hurts when he steps back to pass. You don't know where it's coming from. They're very creative in terms of their blitzing scheme and the angles in which they send their blitzers. I think it's going to be a key matchup for Jalen in terms of identifying. How many times have we talked about Jalen, honing in on a receiver and not looking at his second and third options? He better get rid of the ball quickly in this case, because Brian Flores is going to make him make decisions a lot sooner than a lot of defensive coordinators will.
37.7% of the time, the Minnesota Vikings blitz.
Yeah,
so
that's all you need to know.
This offensive line and Jalen Hurts got to be on point today. Seth, who do you got behind enemy lines?
They got to win on first down. That's going to be the crucial down to watch. Listen, there's no other player on this field today that's going to have more of an axe to grind than one Carson Wentz. Okay, Carson has started the last 3 games for the Minnesota Vikings. He's 2-1. He's averaging 253 yards per game. He's at 5 touchdowns in 3 games against 2 interceptions, and you see the rating right there, 99.5. You know, and Carson will run. He can run. The Eagles' defense has struggled against quarterbacks that can get out of the pocket and make things happen, you know, with their legs. Bo Nix, Jackson Dart last week. So it's going to be interesting to see this matchup with one Carson Wentz against a team that drafted him, you know, in the first round, a team that he helped win a Super Bowl, was an integral piece of them winning the Super Bowl. And, you know, within 3 years' time, the same team that jettisoned him off to the Indianapolis Colts. So there's nothing like, you know, a football scorned. I know the saying. I know the saying is, you know, a woman, but you know, I've been in this situation before where, you know, I was on the team and left and came back, you know, and wanted to show not only the city but, you know, the organization what a mistake they made, and there's no greater motivation. So he's got to be salivating right now. I mean, his resting heart rate has to be close to 95 right now.
It's funny you should say that because Minnesota is his 6th team in the last 6 years. He was asked earlier this year, if you could trade places with one person in your lifetime, who would it be? And I watched the video, and he sat there for a moment, he thought about it, and then he said emphatically, Nick Foles. So it still sticks in his craw that he was he was having an MVP season, 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 2017. Everybody talked about he was the front runner for the MVP award, and he tears up his knee in Week 14 against the Rams, and then he had to sit there and watch his backup lead this team to the promised land. If you really think about it, once he went down, everybody was giving up hope on the Eagles even getting deep into the playoffs. And even when he went to the playoffs, the bettors were picking against the Eagles in the playoffs. But it turned out to be that magical season. Can you imagine that you were at the helm of this franchise? This was your team, your moment to shine in the sun. It was all taken away from you. So the fact that he admitted that 6 years later tells you what he's thinking. So yes, I don't like to use the term revenge, but I think he wants to get a measure of satisfaction in his game today against his former team.
Listen, it is amazing to me that he actually admitted that. Because in my opinion, it is the ghost of Nick Foles that has ruined one Carson Wentz's career. Because he came back too early after the injury, then he broke his back, and he tried to hurry back again, and it didn't go well with him. All why? Because he was chasing the adoration of the city that Nick Foles owned, and he was going to be the franchise quarterback instead of just coming back, going to work, doing what he had to do to get better as a player, trying to lead the team. You know, it's amazing to me, and a lot of people don't look at it that way, D-Gun, but I do, and I've watched him because I've watched everything that he's done. I've watched even how he's dealt with Jalen. And, you know, his disdain, the disdain looks that he had for Jalen when they were both on the team and during Jalen's rookie year, especially at the end of the year when Jalen took over. I thought that Doug probably should have pulled Carson early in the year, maybe week 8, give him a couple of weeks, then you can bring him back. But once you make the decision to ride with him until week 12, and then Jalen comes in and wins the game against the #1 defense in the National Football League, you have no other choice but to ride with Jalen the rest of the way. And then the departure, and everybody knows how the rest of that went. But I think at every turn, Nick Foles, the ghost of Nick Foles, is what has destroyed a promising Carson Wentz career, because he's been trying to live above that his entire career. Everywhere that he's gone, he's trying to prove that, you know, I'm the guy that got the Eagles to the Super Bowl in 2017. I'm the guy that should have been on the Wheatie box and the guy that should have went down, you know, to Disneyland. I'm the guy. I should have been the guy. And when you live that way with that kind of regret, man, you can never overcome that.
Yeah, it's funny. Doug Peterson was on a podcast a few days ago, and he was asked, what do you think went wrong with Carson Wentz? I don't know how to describe it. He said, I don't. He said, it's just one of those things. You know, he was up here, and all of a sudden he just continually spiraled downward for him.
No, it ain't one of them things. You know, jealousy and envy will destroy you faster than any other thing.
True. It is true.
Hell hath no fury like a quarterback scorned, I believe is the point you were making.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think we're going to print the T-shirts. They'll be available. SethJoynerShow.com. The other part of this is, and I don't mean to be too technical with anybody, but in watching Carson Wentz this year, also in the time he started for the Minnesota Vikings, he still has that hero ball gene in him, and we saw it with Jackson Dart 10 days ago, where he was scrambling behind the line of scrimmage. We saw it with Baker Mayfield and Bo Nix. The one thing with Carson Wentz, and this is just what he defaults to, is that hero ball where he thinks he could still make the play. That's where he ends up taking a big hit. That's where he ends up trying to force a ball, getting an interception. I'd love to see the Eagles turn up the heat on him in this game and force him into those mistakes that we all know he's very capable of making.
Well, he got some weapons.
Yes, he absolutely does.
Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson.
And T.J. Hockenson.
Yeah. I mean, he got some weapons that'll make you think twice about turning up the heat. If you're going to turn up the heat, them front four better be the ones that, get to the thermostat. Because if you got to bring that extra guy, I do not like having Adoree Jackson or Keely Ringo line up over there one-on-one against Justin Jefferson. I don't like the matchup. I'm sorry.
Hey, look, I love that Quinyon Mitchell's playing in this game, but we all know hamstrings can be a very fickle thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, man.
And now we're also talking still, even though he is active today, Jalen Carter playing in this game with this heel injury. The shoulder supposedly is not a big deal anymore. He talked in his locker this week saying that the shoulder was good, the heel was good, and then all of a sudden he shows back up on the injury report and was questionable going in today, but is active. I agree. I don't want to see somebody come out of coverage in this situation. That defensive line has to win that battle. When we come back, we're going to give you our official predictions for Eagles, Vikings, and also talk a little bit more about Jalen Hurts' role in this offense and why we have seen so many struggles around. A lot of pieces of this pie to go around. We'll talk about that and more when we return on the Verizon pregame show.
At Mid-Penn Bank, we believe in the power of community. We're not just another bank, we're your bank. We're also your neighbor. For over 150 years, we've been helping dreams come true, financing projects that make a difference locally. From small businesses to community centers, we're here to support what matters most to you, donating time and resources to strengthen the Philadelphia region. And when Philly's favorite superstars need a bank they can trust, they turn to Mid-Penn Bank just like you can. Mid-Penn Bank. Stronger communities, stronger futures. Let's build something great together.
At Revolution X, we know that fortunes are made in times of uncertainty. Are you selling your investment real estate? Are you interested in deferring your tax with a 1031 exchange? At RevX, we're experts in 1031 exchange planning and the use of passive real estate options using DSTs. Not in the midst of an exchange and want to invest in real estate but don't know where to start? Revolution X has institutional-grade real estate options for any size investor right now. Set up a consultation at RevXWealth.com. RevX, defer the tax, maximize the gain.
Gentlemen, are you ready for a wardrobe update? Introducing Divine Nine's Custom Menswear, your clothier for truly unique, custom-made threads. With Divine Nine, you can design your own one-of-a-kind suit, jacket, slacks, shirts, golf pants, and shorts, perfectly handcrafted by our skilled artisans who will bring your vision to life. Prepare to stand out from the crowd with Divine Nine's Custom Clothier, official clothier of Seth Joyner. Custom clothing made for you.
Hi, I got some work done with another surgeon. If I give you the bill, can you give me a better deal on a better face? Like this?
We're not doing that.
Well, at Verizon, anyone can bring in their AT&T or T-Mobile bill, and they'll give you a better deal on the best 5G network. Read my lips. You're not as cool as Verizon.
Okay. So right out of the gate, I'm going to throw the sets for the giveaway.
My eyes are up here.
Bring your AT&T or T-Mobile bill to Verizon for a better deal.
I miss turtlenecks.
This upcoming segment is brought to you by Weber Display and Packaging. Before we get to our predictions for our player to bank on, as well as the score prediction, we'd love to give some stuff away, wouldn't we, Seth, to the good people watching the show?
Yeah, and I can't say, that I knew anything, but, man, we've got a Brandon Graham signed football and mini helmet that we're giving away today. How special is that going to be for somebody to win it today? We did the promo over all our social media platforms, but you must be in the chat for the post game in order to win. That is where the winner is going to be selected from. So make sure that you tune in when the clocks go 000, right back here for the Verizon postgame show.
That's former and future Eagle Brandon Graham jersey. So that's a first in the business there. Let's get to our predictions, our players to bank on for this game today. Derek Gunn, who are you looking at?
Player to bank on, I'm going to have to go with Dallas Goedert in this game. I think Brian Flores is going to make Jalen Hurts makes decisions a lot sooner. I think this could be a day Goedert could have a big day, like 8 catches and over 100 yards receiving, and help this Eagles offense get back to some type of consistency whatsoever. I'm going to go with Dallas Goedert today.
Dallas Goedert. Seth Joyner, who's your player to bank on?
Before I get to my player, the winner is not going to be pulled from the chat. It's going to be announced in the chat, just so that there's no confusion.
Copy that.
Because we had people that that got in on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, all over the place. And to be fair, we're not going to just pull just from the chat. We're going to pull from the entire pool, but we're going to announce it. The way you're going to find out who won will be in the post-game show.
I better get my name in the chat then.
You better hurry. You better hurry up.
Listen,
today is the day. The Eagles are either going to get healthy running the football today, or they're going to be, in this conundrum the entire season. So I look for Saquon Barkley to have a breakout day today against a defense that's giving up a lot of yards on the ground. If they can't get right today, if they can't fix their woes today, then we're in for a tough road to hoe.
Saquon Barkley. I'm going to take Jalen Hurts. Of all the problems that the Eagles have, Jalen Hurts has much better football in him, and we have seen that. Now, you can talk about the offensive line. I believe, number one, the offensive line has to get healthy to play better before anything else. You talk about a guy like Kevin Patullo. Hopefully he gets better during his on-the-job training throughout this season. But if there's one player that I know has only played 2 quarters throughout this season in every game, and those 2 quarters have been phenomenal, I know that there's a much better quarterback than what we have seen in Jalen Hurts, and I want to see that today. But, hey, if you're right and it's Saquon Barkley, I'll take that too, as long as it amounts to a win. Unfortunately, for predictions,
it's going to be all right because, listen, if the Saquon running the ball, cures a lot of ills for everything. If Saquon's running the ball more effectively, Jalen Hurts is going to be much more effectively. I don't need Jalen Hurts to shine and, Saquon Barkley not. We know that the offense runs much more now. And it doesn't have to be to the level mark of last year. Like Saquon don't have to run it 30, 35 times, but he has to run it efficient enough, 80 to 100 yards. He's got to run it efficient enough to bring play action alive for Jalen to do what he's got to do in the passing game to the wide receivers.
Of all the stats you could throw out there about the Eagles, I don't understand how an offense that has Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts as their quarterback is averaging under 100 yards rushing per game.
Because they can't block.
That goes back to the number one problem.
They're going to tell you, whoever wins in the trenches on both sides of the ball is more than likely to win the game. And they haven't dominated on either side of the ball.
Seth brought up a point earlier in the show, and it's been sticking in my craw, and it's been resonating in my ears when Seth said, year 6, Jalen should own this offense.
Definitely.
Thursday night, I watched an old man named Joe Flacco, who had just been in Cincinnati 10 days, barely got to know his teammates, walk up and down the field on Pittsburgh's defense, completing 342 yards worth of passes and 3 touchdowns. Now, it's nice when you have a guy named Jamar Chase, you can throw 16 of your 31 completions too. That's a little bit different, for $161, but the bottom line is that offense with Joe Flacco ran fluidly better than it has since Joe Burrow went down with that injury. If he could walk in off the street and command that offense and win a game that nobody expected the Bengals to win, how in the world can we be sitting here every day and every week talking about Jalen, discombobulated in an offense he should own 6 years into his tenure? That's the one thing I'm going to be looking at real close today to see how he commands this offense and his decision making. If not, floodgates opening on post-game show tonight.
Keep that momentum. Keep that momentum, Gunner.
I got my galoshes.
Yeah, you better bring a gondola with it as well. Not just a galoshes.
Yeah. And what, your waders? Put your waders on?
Yep, waders.
There we go.
The whole 9 yards.
Yeah, listen, let me just say this, Mark, and I know you got to get to moving.
All good.
If Carson Wentz beats the Eagles today, it ain't going to be nice in Philly next week, man.
No. So if he throws some 300 yards on this Eagles defense, it's going to be real bad.
So on that note, predictions, gentlemen. Anybody want a first crack? You want
I'll
me to
go.
take the first swing? What do
I'll
you got?
go.
What do you got?
I think that, this is going to be a tight game. When you look at the Minnesota Vikings offensively, they don't rank in the top 10 in any statistical category as far as an offense is concerned. So I think that there's a little bit of reprieve for the Eagles defense, who personally don't rank in the top 10 in anything except for the red zone. Offensively, I think it's an advantage for us in the fact that we want to run the football and that the Minnesota Vikings aren't that good against the run. And in order for them, and the Vikings rank in the top 10 in every other statistical category except for run defense. So in order for us to supersede some of those numbers that D. Gunn had up earlier, we are going to have to run the football. That being said, I still think the Eagles are the superior team. And I think it's going to be a low-scoring, tight game. Give me the Eagles 21, the Vikings 17.
21-17, Eagles over the Vikings. There you go. Gunner, what do you got?
I don't want to see the Eagles win this game like 21-20. I want them to smack the taste out of Minnesota's mouth today. I want the head coach to be fiery like he has been in the past, spitting foam up and down the sidelines when his team's doing good or bad.
Talking to the guys in the fans?
Yes.
In the stands?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Talking to the people in the stands. Do whatever you have to do. I don't want to hear about the fact that, we could have done this a little bit better. You're the defending Super Bowl champions. Right now, you're still in control of the division. Even with all the negative stuff that has been going on both on and off the field with your football team, you are still the best team in your division and on paper, arguably, the best team in the NFC. You need to show it today. You cannot go into Minnesota today and allow this guy named Carson Wentz and a mediocre Vikings offense to kick you in the behind. Now, I said on my podcast, Birds Weekly, earlier this week with Ray Didinger, I said, I'm picking Eagles 23-20 to win this game. As we sat here and talked about this game, I started to flip-flop a little bit. But then I came back to my senses. A voice from above spoke to me, said, D-Gun? Because I talk to myself sometimes like that in the third person. I just have to. That's how I get through life. So I said, D-Gun? He said, don't be a fool now. You like to go off on the deep end a little bit. I said, you know what, voice? A reason, you're right. So I'm going to stick with it for right now. 23-20 Eagles. If they lose this game, I'm telling you right now, next week I'm picking the Giants over the Eagles. I don't care what happens.
Fly on the wall of your cars, looking at you, talking to yourself, be like, this guy's crazy.
I drive them down the highway, people looking at me, man, somebody better call the guys with the net for this dude.
Animated conversation with himself. I'm in the same boat as you guys. I think it's going to be a close game. I look at a 24-20 Vikings win today. Picking the Vikings over the Eagles, as I just think the Eagles have too many problems to solve, and it might take the bye week to do it. Not a mini bye, an actual bye. So hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully you guys are right. We'll break it all down either way in the Verizon post-game show coming up after Eagles-Vikings. Enjoy the game.
Let's eat.
Go Birds.